minute free. Adults only.
Oh, you startled me. I was just on the phone with a special friend. He calls often, but sometimes it gets, well, you know.
Warning signs of satanic behavior may be apparent. A reclusive behavior pattern and listening exclusively to heavy metal rock music, almost to the point of addiction. You should look further for ritual items such as a pentagram or other satanic symbols, black or red robes, a decorative dagger or knife, a chalice or goblet, black candles.
Are you tired of the same old boring donuts? Well, old Johnny knows how you feel. At old Johnny's Bakery, we make the finest glazed and icing-covered donuts, guaranteed to tickle your sweet tooth. Located just off the old dirt road behind the Williams farm. They say it takes a lot of balls to open up a fucking bakery. And here at Johnny's, we got big, swollen nutsack. We accept 3 forms of fucking payment here. Because remember, nobody, and I repeat, nobody fucking eats for free. The payments we accept are you pay with cash, you pay with credit, or you pay with your ass. So if you like large, swollen balls and a nice, sweaty nutsack swinging and hitting your face, come on down to Johnny's and give us a fucking call. Remember, when you come to Johnny's Bakery, you can check in anytime you fucking like, bitch. But you can never fucking leave. Hey guys, it's me again, Eric here at Mountaintop 9, and in this video, I want to take a trip down memory lane and remember when I was first exposed to the Hellraiser films. I want to talk about Hellraiser 1, alright? I want to talk about Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, and reminisce a little bit about Hellraiser 3 as well. You know, those first 3 films in the series, those were the ones that really, grabbed my attention back when I was young, when I was in my formative years as a horror fan. Those were the 3 that really stood out to me. So first, let's talk about the first 2 films, because I was exposed to these films in a very interesting way, okay? Back in the late 80s, HBO, they did this thing one Friday night or a Saturday night, I can't remember which, but they played Hellraiser, the first one, and then right after that, they played Hellraiser 2. So it was like a double feature that HBO did, and this was like probably sometime in 1989, I would presume, something like that. And, you know, I was 5 or 6 years old at the time, and I remember seeing Pinhead, okay? A commercial on HBO about how they were going to be showing Hellraiser. And I just saw the way Pinhead looked, and I didn't even know what he was called at the time. I'll tell you what I called him, though. You know what I called Pinhead? I called him Hellraiser. I thought that Hellraiser, the title, I thought that that's who Pinhead was. So every time Pinhead would walk on screen, all right, in the fucking movies, I go, there's Hellraiser. There he is. Look at Hellraiser standing over there. So that's kind of, you know, when you're 5, 6, 7 years old, you don't really have all your marbles formed yet in your brain. You don't have all your synapses firing just right, you know, because you're just a kid. So that's what I thought. So I thought that was a little funny how whenever he'd come on, I go, there's Hellraiser. So anyway, I remember that night after I'd seen the previews, I told my grandma, I was like, we gotta tape these. And we put a tape in the VCR, and when Hellraiser came on, we hit record. And I was just really taken back at how disturbing the movie was. You know, here we've got a movie where you've got these sadomasochistic demons from some netherworld, all right? They're being conjured up by this box, by the lament configuration, this really weird box. And when people mess around with this box and conjure them up, they take you beyond the limits of pleasure and pain. And of course that means hooks going through people's flesh and stretching them out and all this crazy gruesome shit. And I just loved all the gore and violence that was in this first Hellraiser film. I loved all that. I loved all the really wicked, twisted scenes in this movie. The only thing that I didn't like about the first Hellraiser when I was a kid, all right, was the fact that you don't see Pinhead as much. And I just remember sitting there thinking, you know, in my 6-year-old brain, I remember thinking, where's Hellraiser? When are they going to show Hellraiser? But, you know, nowadays, of course, I love Hellraiser. It's a really great horror film. It's just really twisted. It's brutal. The scenes with Uncle Frank, of course, and when he's totally just skinned, all right? He has no skin on his body, so you see all the glistening muscle tissue and blood and bone, and it's just really gruesome, grisly stuff. And the way he has Julia bringing men back there so he can take their skin and become whole again and escape the Cenobites. All of that stuff is really enthralling and interesting. And of course, you've got that bearded guy in the movie. And I think he's called the engineer, and he's kind of the guy who looks after the box, all right? And all he is a shape-shifting demon himself. Okay, because at the end of the movie, you see him turn into this devilish winged creature, and he flies away with the box. And but anyway, that scene where he's in that pet store where Kirsty works, and you see him taking all those bugs, and he's got all the bugs on his hand, and he's eating the fucking bugs. That is really sick. That turned my stomach even when I was a kid, and I thought, man, that's some weird shit right there. And then that same guy, that bearded guy, I mean, I thought he was scary. He was probably the thing in Hellraiser 1 and Hellraiser 2 that creeped me out the most when I was a kid. I remember at the end of Hellbound Hellraiser 2, when that thing comes up and it's twirling around, it's spinning around, showing all of those faces and all this other horrifying stuff, and then you see him, his face, the bearded guy, and he says, "What's your pleasure, sir?" That creeped me right the fuck out at the end of Hellraiser 2. Forget about it, man. I remember going to bed that night, and that shit had me putting the sheet right over my head. The other thing that jumps out to me about Hellraiser 1 are those scenes where you've got Frank, and every time he sees Kirsty, he goes, "Kirsty, it's your Uncle Frank. Come to Daddy." You know, just the way he says it. Every time he sees Kirsty, he says, "Hey, Kirsty, it's your Uncle Frank. Come to Daddy." What the hell's up with that shit? The come to daddy shit, alright? He's got some really warped shit going on in his imagination.
And you hear all these stories about these silent, in many cases large, football field-sized, orange glowing lights over pastures where mutilated animals are found, which is kind of a green, with slanted, solid black eyes. And there, at the same place, they found the calf, and it was completely and totally eviscerated. Only the hide was left, and the skull bone was inside the head.
Hello, is this 1976 Psych? I was in the dark until I called 1976 Psych. Now I know my past, present, and my future. You can too. Call 1976 Psych.
Hellraiser 1, you know, great movie. And then you've got Hellraiser 2, which just ups the violence quotient. One of the landmark scenes in Hellraiser 2 is when that doctor, he takes the guy right out of the asylum, out of that basement region of the asylum where he's been locked away for years, screaming and talking about "get them off of me" and all this shit. Well, he takes this fucking guy and he puts him on a fucking mattress, you know, the same mattress that Julia died on at the end of the first film. Well, anyway, he puts this guy on the mattress and he gives him a scalpel, a blade. And this guy just starts taking and cutting himself and screaming, "get them off of me." He thinks that there's all kinds of worms, bugs, whatever. I can't even remember what it is off the top of my head. It might be worms or some shit. But he takes the blade. The one thing that never leaves my brain is he takes the blade and just cuts and slices, and his blood is spilling everywhere, all over the mattress. It's seeping into the fabric of the mattress. And this scene is just so grotesque. Very classic stuff. And you've got Julia being resurrected then. She's coming right out of that mattress. And yeah, man, that's one of my favorite scenes in Hellraiser 2 is when that guy is slicing himself up on that mattress. And there's other good stuff in the film too, man. It takes the whole Hellraiser mythos to new levels. And you see Pinhead a lot more in Hellraiser 2, I might add. And that tickled me pink. I remember right at the beginning of Hellraiser 2, you see him right at the beginning, alright? You see him right at the beginning. You see Pinhead standing there. And I remember as soon as Hellraiser 2 started, I said, there's Hellraiser. There he is. Because remember, I was disappointed as I watched part 1 that you didn't get to see him a whole lot. Okay? So in part 2, the fact that you got to see him more, that really struck my fancy. I was really happy about that. And yeah, Hellraiser 2, it just takes everything to the next level. Okay, Hellraiser 2 isn't directed by Clive Barker, it's directed by someone else, Tony Randall, and he did an awesome job. Just a great movie. Hey, and skipping back, I want to tell you one of my favorite scenes in Hellraiser 1. That part where the face is stretched apart with the hooks on the chains and he says, Jesus wept. Man, that scene, it's not so much that it creeped me out, but there's something about it that lingers with you forever. Once you see that part in Hellraiser, it sticks with you for life, man. So yeah, I needed to point out that scene in Hellraiser 1, man. It just really lingers in your subconscious for a long time. And moving along to Hellraiser 3 real quick, I want to say it's not as good. It's not the level of amazing quality that Hellraiser 1 and Hellraiser 2 are, of course. It's not that level, but Hellraiser 3 is still a fun movie. And, you know, I really like that sleazy guy at the beginning. The guy, I forget his name off the top of my head, but, you know, he kind of acts like Johnny Bravo or some shit like that. This guy is just filled with confidence. He's arrogant to the max, and he goes around just handing a girl one rose. And of course, he gets way in over his head when Pinhead comes into the picture, of course. But probably the biggest thing that leaps out to me about Hellraiser 3 is just that 90s feeling it has. It has that early 90s vibe to it. And then it's got a soundtrack that's got Armored Saint on it, and it's got Motorhead doing Hellraiser. But anyway, one other thing I want to point out. After I watched and taped that double feature on HBO, remember, I was only 5 or 6, and if you've watched any of my other videos, and when I've talked about Child's Play, when I first saw Child's Play, after watching that movie, I went and I got a doll, alright? And I tried to bring the fucking doll to life. I put my hand on its head, on its forehead, and tried to say all the Dembella shit, trying to bring this damn doll to life just because I'd watched Child's Play. So, you know, I wanted to try to bring a fucking doll to life. I thought, hey, man, that'd be cool if a doll started walking around doing... Now, how would that be a good idea? Well, it's the same way with Hellraiser. After watching Hellraiser, there was like this circular container in my grandma's bathroom. I don't know what the fuck it was, but it was some kind of tin container. But it was darkly colored, kind of in a similar vein to the puzzle box in Hellraiser. And, you know, back when I was a goddamn kid, you couldn't get on eBay. eBay didn't exist. You couldn't get on eBay and order a Hellraiser puzzle box for 50 bucks, all right? Or anything like that. So you had to make do with what you could. It's just like when I was a kid and I wanted to make a robot. So I took a couple cardboard boxes, drew a fucking face on the thing, and put a tape recorder inside the center so that it would have a voice talking and shit. But anyway, I'm getting way off topic, talking about making robots and everything else. The point is this. I found this circular, darkly colored, old-looking container, and I tried to pretend that that was like sort of a Hellraiser-type puzzle box thing. And I found like a Hellraiser picture, a picture of Pinhead out of a TV guide or a magazine. I can't remember what it was, but I ended up taping a picture of Pinhead over that thing. And anyway, I would take this thing and I would pretend that it was from the Hellraiser universe, alright? Now, the funny thing is even more so, at least with a living doll. At least if a doll came to life, you could kick its fucking ass, right? You could kick the thing right in the goddamn head if it was like coming after you, trying to, you know, assault you. You know, if a doll came to life, he's coming at you like Chucky or some shit, you could be ready and you could throw down with the little fucking thing. But I'll tell you what, with the whole Hellraiser thing, I wouldn't want to fuck around with that shit. I don't know about you, but getting my flesh pulled in all different directions, that really doesn't make my day seem like a happy day. You know what I mean? I don't want to get my skin pulled off of my body. I don't want to be tortured. And so that was the whole thing about Journey Beyond the Realms of Pleasure and Pain. A little pain here and there, not a big deal. We can survive that. There's a difference between having a little bit of pain and having your skin ripped clear off your body, all right? Having your face stretched in 10 different directions. That's not a good time to me. So I don't know why in my head I thought it'd be fun to try to make something that was like the puzzle box in Hellraiser. So that's kind of funny looking back. I mean, because I'll tell you what, if someone gave me a puzzle box from Hellraiser and said, hey, fuck around with this, see if you can conjure up some Cenobites, I'd say, no thank you. I think I'll pass. I kind of want to keep my skin on my body, if you know what I mean. Those are my memories of the Hellraiser series, as far as the first 3 are concerned, guys. They're not a deep dive. I didn't, do a thorough review of each film. This video was more just to reminisce a little bit about, growing up and watching those movies for the first time and what leapt out to me the most about them. I really do love those first 3 Hellraiser movies, and the first 2 in particular, they are just damn near masterpieces, you know what I mean? They're just great pieces of horror. So anyway, guys, let me know in the comment section, what do you think of the Hellraiser movies? You can tell me about the first 3 here, but if you want, you can talk about later entries in the series. I've seen them all myself, and, they all have, wavering quality from film to film. None of them will ever touch the majesty that are the first 2. But, some of them are interesting, some of the later entries are. But yeah, let me know in the comment section, what are your favorite Hellraiser films? What are your favorite moments? And guess what, guys? I'll be seeing you again real soon.